Lower the price. Lower the price. Lower the... Oh, the Switch 2 is out now? Raise the price. Raise the price. So Nintendo has just released their November 2025 financial report. This is a report for the first half of the fiscal year that'll be ending in March 2026. And this covers from April 1st to September 30th. A few key takeaways are that the Nintendo Switch 2 hardware sales have reached 10.36 million, and the cumulative Nintendo Switch family of sales has hit 154.01 million units. Nintendo Switch 2 software sales have totaled to about 20.62 million units, with key titles being Mario Kart World at 9.57 million units, that's including the bundles, and Donkey Kong Bonanza at 3.49 million units, with the attachment rates being 92% for Mario Kart World and 34% for Donkey Kong Bonanza, which is pretty solid, a third of the base. Something else that's actually very interesting is that Nintendo has actually updated their financial forecast. Whereas previously, they estimated that they would sell about 15 million units in the first year, they've now adjusted it to 19 million units, with an increase of 26.7%, a pretty substantial change. And of course, Nintendo Switch OG is down about 65% compared to last year, which isn't really a big surprise. Interestingly though is that the Nintendo DS lifetime sales are less than 10k units away, so the Switch may surpass the Nintendo DS, which of course hurts my soul. Something that I found personally interesting is the numbers breaking down which models that people were buying of the original Switch, with the Nintendo Switch OLED making up 42% of this quarter's shipments, the base Nintendo Switch at 36%, and the Nintendo Switch Lite at 22%. So Nintendo Switch OLED maintains the highest share of this group, which sort of points me to, duh. All this is just pretty obvious. People have been clamoring for a stronger Switch. Keep everything the same, just make a new Switch. Just better. That's not what I wanted, but that's what most people wanted. And it looks like they got it. And obviously people are buying it. And that's why you see this very quick adoption of this new console, because it's the same thing, but just incrementally better. You know, people were already buying Switch OLEDs because they didn't like the original base Switch. Let's be real, the thing was already outdated when it launched, so of course people are going to want an update. So I don't think this comes as much of a surprise to anyone. The consumers have spoken, and they have indicated to Nintendo that they are very much okay with industry-wide price hikes. Budget-conscious consumers have been completely alienated at this point. It's not for you, unfortunately. But I think despite seeing first-party success for Nintendo, third-party developers are going to have a really difficult time putting AAA games on the system. Not just the whole game keycard situation, but also Mario Kart World's 9.57 million units are inflated by the 8.1 million that were sold with the hardware itself, having Nintendo rely on the evergreen titles rather than broad third-party support. This locks revenue in Nintendo's ecosystem, discouraging those multi-platform AAA investments elsewhere and fragmenting developer resources. Nintendo's dominance here is just going to enable more aggressive IP protection, and they are absolutely going to squish smaller studios and rivals, if you can even call them that, like Xbox, which is just going to lead to more monopolistic practices in the future, or right now, which overall stifles innovation in the industry as a whole. So that's why I have such a hard time understanding why people would be celebrating this. They don't really understand what they're celebrating. They think it's a win because the system or company they like is doing well, but they can't read between the lines. Once other companies start doing what Nintendo's doing, that's going to make Nintendo have to double down and do it even more. When you see things like having to pay for Nintendo Switch 2 editions of games, more aggressive push for online subscriptions, and double dipping on games that have already released, it's just going to get worse. And yes, other companies have done this, absolutely, but I think the Nintendo Switch 2 is uniquely abhorrent with its examples. Nintendo actually made a very good video the other day where he was talking about Mario Party Jamboree, and I had never thought about the fact that, yeah, why did Animal Crossing get a largely free update, but when it comes to Mario Party, you have to buy a whole different console just to experience what the changes are. You know, of course, excluding the reasonable things like the mouse controls and whatnot. I find that very odd, but also not surprising because this whole ecosystem, the whole thing that they have set up is extremely confusing. I think that's the word that's going to be the prevailing feeling about this system for at least its first year, possibly many years to come. It's very confusing. The messaging is all over the place. You know, they gave you these free upgrades if you had Nintendo Switch Online with the Zelda games, but then now you have to pay, and what the prices are keep changing, and some games get updates, some games don't. Some games get better performance updates than others. Some games actually are physical. Some games are just game keycards. It's all very confusing. The whole system is odd, very strange. And I think the weirdest part about it is it's possibly the least complicated idea in theory. It's just a Nintendo Switch 2. It should be very simple to just simply iterate. If that's what they're going to do, if that's the approach they want to take, it should be very simple to just take the games, up-res them, give people a reason to buy the console, and there you go, you have a win. It's not really innovative, it's not really doing anything crazy like I like to see, but it would still be a win. It would still be the right move for them. And yet they are failing at that. But does it matter? Does it matter that they're not doing that to the best of their abilities? Because people are buying it. It's selling very well. But the question is it selling well because it's a good system? Or is it selling well because it's just incrementally better than the Nintendo Switch? That's the real question here. People already liked the Nintendo Switch. So people naturally will just like the Nintendo Switch 2 as a result of that. The only reason why you wouldn't like the Nintendo Switch 2 is if the practices surrounding it were a net negative. Price gouging, the game key cards, the Switch 2 editions, we've talked about it a million times. You understand them at this point. So I think that we may potentially see a boom and bust scenario. Basically an alternating phase of economic growth and decline, which isn't something that's too foreign for most companies. However, in this case, I think we're going to see some very sharp examples of it, sharp declines and sharp inclines. Market volatility might reach an all-time high. Despite competition seeming to go by the wayside, even the handheld PCs can't keep up with this. Nintendo's own messaging is so confused that at this point, the biggest thing that can hurt them is themselves. And they are doing exactly that. But does it matter? Does it matter when you're shifting your sales goals to be even higher than what you had originally anticipated? Do you care when a vocal minority, majority, or whatever voices their concerns? No, you don't. Because it wasn't too long ago when everyone on the internet was upset about the price. It wasn't that long ago when everyone said, I am not buying that thing. That is too expensive. It wasn't too long ago when we said $80 is way too much for a video game. It wasn't too long ago. And yet here we are. Enough people have bought into it, enough people have drank the Kool-Aid to sustain them going forward. But like I said, the question is that just a group of people that were always going to buy it in the first place that are just getting that out of the way? Or is this really a sign of things to come? Is the Nintendo Switch 2 here to stay? It's the fastest selling console because it's so close to its predecessor that, it's easy to adopt. But will that continue to be the case? It might just be for a little bit here, especially going into the holidays. But year 2, year 3 of the Nintendo Switch 2 might not look the same. And you and Nintendo are going to see a drop-off that will seem surprising to a lot of people, but it's pretty obvious. I wouldn't go as far as to say there's like a Nintendo Switch 2 bubble or something like that, but the main reason why people are buying it is simply just because they were sick of the Nintendo Switch 1. It was already outdated when it came out, and so this thing has needed to happen for quite a while now. In my opinion, this Switch 1 overstayed its welcome by a couple years. And now the Switch 2 has released with hardware that still isn't at the top of the line when it comes to its release date. And so I think you're going to see the Switch 2 overstay its welcome as well. We're going to be stuck with this thing for at least, another 8 years. Not because it's good, but because there aren't any other options for this exact type of product. Unless you're someone who is going to buy a handheld PC system, which personally I don't own, despite thinking they're pretty neat. But a slight tangent, for me personally, I prefer handheld gaming to be something that I can fit in my pocket, like a DS, 3DS, Game Boy, etc. So I never really was super interested in the whole take it on the go with you anywhere thing. In fact, it seemed more of a liability. I'm like, I don't want to take this giant tablet like that. I feel like it could break at any moment, I would feel a little bit too nervous taking it anywhere outside the house, without like protectors and stuff like that. But then you have to actually carry it or put it in a bag, and I don't know, it kind of loses the whole appeal to me. But that's just me. And obviously my opinion doesn't really matter in that case because a lot of people do like it and a lot of people do take it with them wherever they go. And that's great. But apparently not enough people value that exact type of device enough to where there can be competition, at least in a large scale, to the Nintendo Switch itself. It seems the Nintendo Switch just happens to be, at this point, a console that you can take wherever, but it's not the main selling point anymore. Handheld PC systems, despite doing pretty well for just like the limited marketing and, having to go up against a giant like Nintendo, are never going to be that big. I would like to see them do better, if just for the fact that they would be competing with Nintendo, but clearly Nintendo still has that special sauce. Nintendo has their IPs. Nintendo has Nintendo. and you can't get that anywhere else. So despite them nickel and diming consumers and doing extremely questionable things, having very confusing marketing, having mixed messaging all across the board, they're still selling very well at this point in time. And in my opinion, that's mostly due to the fact that, like I said, it's easy to adopt. It's just a Switch 2. Talk to me in 2 or 3 years and tell me I'm wrong. I'm open to it. But I think right now we're just seeing it coast off of the Switch 1 success. I don't think the Nintendo Switch 2 would stand on its own 2 feet that strongly if it was in a vacuum. But as many people like to parrot online, I am just a vocal minority. And my opinion, therefore, doesn't matter. So, I was going to say, so let me know what you guys think, but then it's like, damn. Our opinions do matter. That's the thing. Minority or not, everyone's welcome to voice their opinion, and even if you end up being like wrong about a prediction or something, the way you feel about something is absolutely valid. Whether you love it, whether you hate it, both are valid, and I look forward to being right or wrong. I'm okay with either. Of course, I have things that I would like to see happen and whatnot, but in terms of me being right or wrong, that's not as important to me. I want to see the video games industry do better. I want to see it succeed. I want things to move in a direction that is pro-consumer. Something that we can all look at and say, you know what, this is good. This resonates with me. I feel like I'm getting a good deal. I'm not getting ripped off. I'm not being taken advantage of. And I'm having fun. That's ultimately what I talk about here. You know, a lot of people will say no one hates Nintendo more than Nintendo fans. And you can apply that to a lot of things. You know, no one hates Pokemon more than Pokemon fans, etc. But the reason why those people, as you say, hate it is because they're passionate. They don't hate it. It comes from a place of passion. It comes from a place of genuine interest. And they say these things because they want to see it do better. They want to see their favorite thing succeed and do well and be the best that they can be. Maybe it's because they've seen it do well in the past. You know, they've seen a version of Nintendo or whatever thing they're talking about. They've seen a version of it that was so good that they can't believe it's not there anymore. It's hard to process. And it's also even harder to accept. Some people have, but a lot of people like myself haven't. I've seen Nintendo at a higher standard. I've seen Nintendo do better than this. So I'm going to keep pushing for that. Is everything they're doing horrible and awful, and are they just irredeemable at this point? No, of course not. But there are things that they should absolutely change. And I think the first step to change is allowing the other side to voice their opinion. Allowing there to be a debate in the first place. If you just blindly accept whatever they give you, it's never going to change. So the question going forward is whether or not the core player base will have a standard. Will they just buy whatever Nintendo throws at them? Or will they say no in some cases? Maybe not to the system as a whole, but maybe to certain scenarios where they say, you know what? I liked the system, but I can't condone this. I liked this game, but I can't condone that. And that's where we need to be. No one should accept everything outright just because it's been handed to you. Question things. Want more. Raise the standards. So we can all have fun and beat the shit out of each other in Kirby Air Riders. I genuinely hope that day will come. My name is Goob. Thank you so much for watching. I know I'm not the most informative channel. I tend to focus more on the emotional sides of things. I kind of give a little bit of data points here, but data is only half of it to me. A lot of the industry likes to focus on that, and that's totally fine and honestly reasonable. I just like to focus on the feeling side of things because even though I think data is extremely important and obviously is the master of the conversation, I think that the way things feel and how people accept things and at what point. So that's why I ended the video the way I did. That's what I value. That's the sort of angle that I bring to the conversation. There's a lot of channels that do data probably a lot better than I do, and news in general and stuff like that. For me, I'm just going to give my opinion and I'm going to listen to yours. And of course, if there is anything I missed, if there is any data points that I didn't hit or I glossed over, then you can obviously tell me in the comments, and I will absolutely take them into account. Thank you so much for watching. Please consider subscribing. I'm really close to 1K. That would be awesome to hit. But in any case, thank you so much and have a Goob day.